This is Tony from the A Minute to Midnight show. I want to do a short video here talking about the situation in the Middle East, particularly as it applies to Saudi Arabia. And I am wondering if Saudi Arabia is making a big play to be at the very centre of the New World Order. We'll look first at an article here in foreignpolicy.com website. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has put the Middle East on a collision course and the White House will own the consequences. If we go down the page further, we can see that in a string of pretty spectacular foreign policy failures, Yemen, Qatar and now Lebanon, Mohammed bin Salman's most notable success abroad may well be the wooing and capture of President Donald Trump and his son-in-law Jared Kushner. Americans have long been infatuated with kings and the kingdom, but King Salman and Mohammed bin Salman seem to have set a new land speed record in convincing the Trump administration that they hold the keys to war, peace, and the transformation of the region. And it says further down here that Trump's first foreign policy trip was to Saudi Arabia was unprecedented. The Saudis, having mesmerised and disarmed the president and official Washington with their glowing orb, were given a series of blank cheques and a margin to manoeuvre in the region without giving much in return. I'm going to come back to the glowing orb shortly, but first I want to look at who is Mohammed bin Salman. Mohammed bin Salman, born on the 31st of August 1985, is the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, first Deputy Prime Minister of Saudi Arabia and the youngest Minister of Defence in the world. Mohammed bin Salman is also President for the Council for Economic and Development Affairs. He's been described as the power behind the throne of his father King Salman. He was appointed Crown Prince in June of 2017, following his father's decision to remove Mohammed bin Nayef from all positions, making Mohammed bin Salman heir apparent to the throne. And now, of course, we've seen Mohammed bin Nayef, Saudi Arabia's ex-crown prince, not only removed as he was to be the next in line for the throne, but he has had his bank accounts frozen. According to Reuters news agency and the Wall Street Journal, bank accounts linked to Mohammed bin Nayef and some of his immediate relatives were frozen by Saudi authorities. 11 princes, 4 ministers and several foreign ministers who have been either detained or facing allegations including money laundering and bribery. Also detained was Prince Al-Walid bin Talal, billionaire investor and actually one of the richest men in the world. Now, we've seen many Western governments and various people in the media already talking about this, Crown Prince bin Salman as if he is some sort of great reformer, but how often have we seen that before where these moderate reformers turn out to be not so moderate, but it makes it easier to justify it for the US government, etc., to have relationships with these leaders because they're moderate. But are they really? Okay, now folks, bear with me. I'm going to take you down some rabbit trails, but this is very interesting and very concerning at the same time. So firstly, let's look at the Global Centre for Combating Extremism. Back in May 2017, the Riyadh Summit. Basically, leaders and representatives of 55 Arab and Muslim countries were in attendance, and it was Donald Trump's first visit to Saudi Arabia. Now, if we go down here, May 20th, US President Donald Trump signs a $350 billion arms deal with the King of Saudi Arabia, and the arms deal was the largest in world history. It included tanks, combat ships, missile defense systems, as well as radar communications, cyber security technology. The transfer was widely seen as a counterbalance against the influence of Iran in the region. So that brings us to the Global Centre for Combating Extremist Ideology. Remember Donald Trump putting his hands on the glowing orb along with President al-Sisi from Egypt and King Salman from Saudi Arabia. Now remember, Saudi Arabia has one of the worst records of human rights violations of any country, and yet the centre is there, okay? Now, the Global Centre will be managed by a board of 12 directors, appointed every 5 years, and the number of the directors from each state will be dependent on that country's financial contribution to the centre. So, in other words, the richer you are, the more likely you will have influence there. So that perfectly suits wealthy monarchies, such as Saudi Arabia. And the centre was basically given NSA-type technology to spy on people in the Middle East. So anybody that is not part of your religious belief system could be considered to be an extremist, be it a Christian or a Jew or even a different branch of Islam. So if they are deemed to be extremist, they can crack down on them. So wealthy monarchies that have a certain religious belief could determine what they consider to be extremist ideology and then have the most clout in clamping down on it. Notice it's called a Global Centre for Combating Extremist Ideology, and it's to be the guiding light and global hub for the international efforts against the prime enemy of humanity, that is extremism. So who's going to decide what's extremism? What if they, what's to stop them deciding that if somebody says that there is salvation in no one but Jesus Christ, that could be deemed as extremism because it's exclusive? And note here how we see a pyramid shape and light and dark, which is very much the dualistic theme. The as above, so below, light and dark, that pervades all occult mystery school thinking. Now I just want to go down and show you this. 7 continents in a virtual world acting globally is at the heart of the centre's strategy, where virtual sphere media and internet are expected to be open fields for counter-extremism activities. To that end, the centre is already armed with state-of-the-art, innovative software tools and technologies with the most stringent standards of security, reliability and efficiency required to achieve their goals. So this is, remember, in an Islamic country, and they're telling you that they have the technology to basically enact stringent standards of censorship on the internet. Okay, now let's fast forward to recent events. This is in Middle East Eye. Exclusive: senior Saudi figures tortured and beaten in purge. Several detainees taken to hospital with torture injuries, while sources tell Middle East Eye scale of crackdown is bigger than authorities have revealed. And it goes on and details a bunch of torture and things, how they weren't tortured in the faces, but on their bodies. One of the most famous is Prince Bandar bin Sultan, a former Saudi ambassador to Washington and confidant of former President George W. Bush, and he's been held on corruption charges as well. It goes on further down to say, to prevent others from fleeing, Mohammed bin Salman has ordered a freeze on private bank accounts. The number of accounts closures and those banned from travel is many times the number of people who have been arrested, sources in Riyadh told Middle East Eye. No one expected the crackdown of this scale and against princes of such seniority in the House of Saud, which is why so many of those detained were caught red-handed and had no time to flee. The purge against other members of the royal family is unprecedented in the kingdom's modern history. Okay, so now I want to take you to an article written by an American who lives in the Middle East, Cherry Behrens. And this article is very, very interesting. It paints a completely different picture of what's happening than what you're hearing by most of the Western press. Saudi Prince bin Salman has made himself dictator, is massacring minority groups, and has paved the way for the West to back him. On the 4th of November, Lebanese Prime Minister Hariri appeared on Saudi Arabia-owned media network and announced his resignation. Though Hariri said he was resigning out of fear for his life, the Lebanese government has announced his shock resignation, having had no inkling of any problems. Now, within an hour of his resignation, the Ritz-Carlton in Riyadh sent a memo to their guests that they must vacate the hotel immediately, stating that it was a matter of urgent national security. That same day, the King of Saudi Arabia issued a royal decree creating an anti-corruption committee to be fully controlled by Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Following this decree, 11 princes and 38 others were arrested and detained at the Ritz-Carlton. Just days before these arrests, Prince bin Salman had hosted a convention at the Ritz-Carlton titled Future Investment Initiative, which focused on tech development and investment opportunities and tied them to Sophia the robot, was unveiled at this convention. Also at this convention was announced that Prince bin Salman was constructing a new city, a high-tech smart city called the Intelligent City, which is NEOM, and I'm going to be going into that shortly. The princes and officials who were arrested had flown to Saudi Arabia to attend this convention at the personal invitation of Prince bin Salman. The princes and ministers have homes in Europe and elsewhere and are rarely in Saudi Arabia at the same time. The convention brought them together at the Ritz-Carlton, where Prince bin Salman then arrested them right after the convention. At the beginning of the summer, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Nayef, the immediate heir to the throne, was ousted by Prince bin Salman. Nayef was placed under house arrest by bin Salman, and then bin Salman then took his place as Crown Prince, meaning that bin Salman will now be the next King of Saudi Arabia. Basically, bin Salman took full control of the military and the police force and made himself Minister of Defence and Minister of Interior. So now bin Salman is in charge of intelligence, the security apparatus, the military, and the police forces. He's also in charge of all foreign affairs because he arrested all the ministers previously in charge of foreign affairs in various countries. Those arrested were told the corruption charges would be removed if they swore their allegiance to bin Salman when he becomes king. They refused. Immediately after their refusal, more arrests were made. At this time, Prince Fahd bin Abdullah was shot and killed at the entrance of his palace gate while he was attempting to flee. Then a helicopter was shot down by Saudi warplanes at the border of Saudi Arabia and Yemen. The helicopter was carrying Saudi Prince Mansur bin Mukran and several of the last remaining Saudi Arabian ministers. They were attempting to flee Saudi Arabia. As soon as the various princes began to be arrested, there were spontaneous riots in the streets in Saudi Arabia by civilians who opposed these arrests. Prince bin Salman immediately squashed all media outlets who were reporting the riots. But video of the massive riots got out on Arabic Twitter, and so did tweets describing events before bin Salman could fully censor Twitter. At the orders of bin Salman, there has been a genocide of Shia inside Saudi Arabia. Entire villages, some with ancient history dating back to Christian times, are being bulldozed, and the people in these villages have been put to death. In July and August, events escalated in Shia villages where bin Salman ordered a barrage of fire on a walled historic Shia neighbourhood that includes airstrikes and heavy artillery. RPG snipers on rooftops picking off fleeing Shia and armoured assault vehicles. The historic village was bulldozed and removed from existence. Bin Salman has been openly targeting Iran for several months via a heavily biased propaganda campaign. It is being done to justify future Saudi Arabia attacks on Shia populations in other countries under the masquerade that it is Hezbollah Saudi Arabia is after. Though no one can disagree that Iran is dangerous, an argument can be made that Saudi Arabia is equally dangerous. It's also really interesting to note that the Saudis are becoming increasingly involved in the situation in Israel as well. Here's this one from the Times of Israel, November the 13th. Saudis told Abbas to accept Trump peace plan or resign. During his surprise summons to Riyadh last week, Palestinian Authority chief was ordered to avoid Iran and cut ties with Hezbollah. Saudi Arabia last week ordered Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas to either accept Israeli-Palestinian peace deal being put together by the Trump administration or resign, according to an Israeli report on Sunday. The Trump administration has begun drafting an Israeli-Palestinian peace proposal based on a two-state solution. And I find this one that's come out today pretty interesting as well. Al-Afaj pointed out that Saddam Hussein, Muammar Gaddafi and many others who promised to destroy Israel are gone while Israel continues to flourish. He therefore concludes that his nation can no longer react to Israel's existence emotionally and must instead worry about the real enemies like Iran, Qatar and Yemeni rebels. Now I want to get to the bit where I'm talking to you about how I think that Mohammed bin Salman is somebody you've got to watch really closely, and that Saudi Arabia may actually be vying to be the centre of the New World Order. Now, this was in The Economist magazine. Saudi Arabia launches a futuristic economic zone. The Crown Prince's plans get even grander. Some 3,500 politicians, business bosses and bankers from around the world crowded into a vast conference centre in Riyadh for a jamboree called Future Investment Initiative. This was the giant coming out party for Vision 2030. Now look at that. Vision 2030, compare that with Agenda 2030, which was announced in 2015. The economic plan to move Saudi Arabia away from dependence on oil. It's the brainchild of the country's crown prince Mohammed bin Salman. The prince proclaimed that he wants the kingdom to be a country of moderate Islam that's open to the world and open to all religions. For extremist ideas, we will destroy them. And so he is launching Neom, Greek Neo meaning new, and Arabic Mostaqbal meaning future. So it's a new future. The ambitions for Neom are huge. It will supposedly attract $500 billion worth of investment from the kingdom's public investment fund and international backers. Now let's take a look at this futuristic city called Neom, which I think is about as New World Order as it gets. In fact, it could end up being potentially the centre of the New World Order, where we can live the future as we create the future, unrivaled in concept, unmatched in intelligence, unconstrained by history, and built on humanity's greatest resource, imagination. Neom is a new kind of tomorrow in the making, a place on Earth like nothing on Earth, a new blueprint for sustainable life on a scale never seen before, where inventiveness shapes a new, inspiring era for human civilization. Neom will operate as an independent economic zone with its own laws, taxes and regulations specially created to boost healthy growth and wealth for the region, investors and residents.
With energy that flows from the sun and wind, neighborhoods that can feed and clean themselves, technologies that make life everything it can be. This is where we can prepare together for the next era of human progress.
Klaus Kleinfeld, the former chairman and chief executive officer of Siemens AG and Alcoa Incorporated, was appointed to lead the development of Neom. And this is set to be huge, folks. The special zone will be established in the northwestern region of Saudi Arabia and is set to include territory from within the Egyptian and Jordanian borders, and to comprise a total area of 26,500 kilometres. And phase 1 of this is due to be completed in 2025. And this place is set to be basically swimming with robots and artificial intelligence. I want to read you something here. It says, "We want the main robot and the first robot in Neom to be Neom Robot Number 1, the Crown Prince said in an interview in a palatial setting next to the Ritz-Carlton in Riyadh. Everything will have a link with artificial intelligence, with the Internet of Things. Everything." The Saudi Vision 2030 is underpinned by the creation of the world's largest sovereign wealth fund, an estimated $2 trillion pot of assets that will drive investment and create jobs. The fund has already committed $20 billion to an infrastructure investment fund with Blackstone Group LP, and as much as $45 billion for a technology fund run by SoftBank. And by the way, folks, the chairman of the Blackstone Group is Stephen Schwarzman, who is a longtime friend of President Donald Trump, and in fact, he chaired President Donald Trump's Strategic and Foreign Policy Forum. So you have a link there between Trump and Schwarzman and the city NEOM. I see this whole tie-up between robots and artificial intelligence and the future to be creepy and weird and rather horror story sci-fi to me. On October 25th, Sophia was made a citizen of Saudi Arabia, the first robot in the world to achieve such a status. I am very honoured and proud of this unique distinction. This is historical to be the first robot in the world to be recognised with a citizenship, Sophia said, announcing her new status during the Future Investment Initiative conference in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And I don't believe it's coincidence that the robot's named Sophia, by the way, because if you do some research, you'll find Sophia is a goddess that fits perfectly with the New World Order Illuminist kind of view of the goddess duality situation. So do some research on that name, Sophia. It's no coincidence. It's also no coincidence, I don't believe, that symbolism in Saudi Arabia contains a lot of New World Order Illuminist type symbolism. And for people that say that symbolism came from Islam, I'm going to say no, it didn't. It well and truly predated Islam by hundreds and in some cases thousands of years. And so I believe this is no coincidence what we're seeing here, this link to artificial intelligence and this futuristic city and everything that we're seeing here, Saudi Arabia potentially vying for the top spot or the center of the New World Order, and possibly Mystery Babylon. However, personally, I don't believe that Islam, as we know it, will be the religion of the New World Order. I think we're going to see a conglomerate religion comprised of a lot of religions that will be the religion of the New World Order that we see in the Bible. And ultimately, it's Luciferian. It's not just Islamic. It's going to be something that wins the world over, and Islam would not do that. Some form of Islam will be included in this globalist religion that's coming, but it's basically an ancient mystery school religion that predates Islam, a long, long way predates Islam, and I think that's where we're going. It's Luciferian in nature, and the ones that won't be tolerated are people like fundamental Christians that will not accept a dualistic or pluralistic religious system. And so we Christians that hold to salvation and no other but Jesus Christ will be the ones that will be persecuted and ultimately that will have to not take the mark of the beast, which I think may be coming out of this. It's too early to say that NEOM is Mystery Babylon or that it's even going to develop into Mystery Babylon, but I think we've got to watch very closely and watch Mohammed bin Salman and Saudi Arabia very closely in the days ahead. Also watch the Vatican very closely and the move to try and bring Protestantism back into the Vatican. And people like Kenneth Copeland are pushing that, because this is all leading to one place, and that is a global religion and a global financial system and a one world government that will be the New World Order. So just watch this closely, folks. We will have to see how it all develops. But there are some real concerning things going on in the Middle East at this time. I think the future is going to be filled with robotics and artificial intelligence and a coming together of global religions into one big religion, and I don't think it's going to be some ISIS type thing where they try and take us back to the Middle Ages. It will be high tech, and it will be supposedly tolerant of religions and different groups, tolerant of everyone except those that won't accept their pluralistic deity points of view. In other words, fundamental Christians won't be tolerated. So anyway, I think I've probably said about as much as I'm going to say here. Could have said more, but I want to not let this stretch on too long. So I shall just leave you with a scripture read to you by a computer voice.
And on her forehead a name was written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and of the abominations of the earth. I saw the woman, drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. Revelation 17:5 and 6.